Greetings, AP European History scholars, for your review for Unit 8 on nationalism at the tail end of the 1800s. And going from top to bottom on the review sheet, comparing Italian and German unification. And this is a big deal at the end of the 1800s, specifically between 1870 and 71. Two new political states exist where before there was only fragmentation. And the state that led unification in Germany is Prussia, and the individual who led that unification is Otto von Bismarck. In Italy, the state is Piedmont in northern Italy, and the individual here is Camillo Cavour. Now, the king of Piedmont is Victor Emmanuel II, but the man who's the mastermind, kind of like Bismarck in Prussia, is Camillo Cavour. The relationship with France: the Germans invade France as part of their process of whipping up patriotism, especially among the southern German states, which were on board with this nationalist agenda finally. And the Italians are going to ally themselves with France to push the Austrians out of the northern Italian states. Attitude towards the church: Otto von Bismarck, once Germany is united, is going to crack down on the Catholic Church, especially in southern Germany, under the suspicion that the southern German Catholics are more sympathetic with Austria, which is also Catholic, and there's this desire to take over the Catholic schools, or take over the agenda here in the Catholic schools of southern Germany, so that a common nationalism will be taught. And to this end, priests which are in opposition are arrested and foreign priests are kicked out. And this is called the Kulturkampf, or the war over culture, the Kulturkampf. And in Italy, the papal states are seized from the Pope, as is Rome and the Vatican itself. So there's confrontation with the Catholic Church in both independence movements. Differences with each other: Italy has two movements. There's a movement moving from the north to the south under Camillo Cavour, and this is a nationalist movement of unification. And Piedmont is a constitutional monarchy. The second movement, which is coming from Sicily to the mainland via Naples and heading north, is under Giuseppe Garibaldi and his red shirts. And this is a Republican movement. Garibaldi wants no king. And one of the amazing things here is that in Italy, these two movements converge because Garibaldi submits his army, his soldiers, to the army of Cavour for a common united front, a common movement that puts nationalism before the cause of republicanism. And there is a king in Italy all the way up through up to World War II. Giuseppe Mazzini is, as far as Italian independence goes, in 1831, he's going to organize what's called Young Italy. And this is really the beginning of the Italian unification movement, the Risorgimento, which ends in 1870 with the integration of Rome into a common Italian nation state. Germany, some terms, some ideas here to be familiar with. The Zollverein is this economic customs union which will precede the political unification of Germany. How Otto von Bismarck's foreign policy differed from Clemens von Metternich. Remember, Clemens von Metternich is the mastermind of the Congress of Vienna, the Concert of Europe, and his goal here is a balance of power. And Otto von Bismarck's foreign policy here is the total opposite of Clemens von Metternich's. The creation of Germany is hugely upsetting to the balance of power, where before there were all these fragmented German states, kind of this buffer between a lot of countries. Now there is this huge, colossal economic, political, military superpower that's birthed at the end of the Franco-Prussian War. So Otto von Bismarck's creation of Germany upsets the balance of power. Blood and Iron is the name for Otto von Bismarck's plan of unification using warfare, using boots on the ground. And the contrast here is the failed 1848 Frankfurt Parliament, where these parliamentary delegates from the various German states are talking and having this powwow, and they're offering a crown of united Germany to Frederick William, the King of Prussia, and he sort of spurns it. He throws it back in their faces, saying he will not receive a crown from the gutter. So Bismarck reads the lay of the land. He says there's not going to be any talking that's going to create Germany. It's going to be war. And there's three wars to be familiar with. There is the war against Denmark to seize the southern provinces of Denmark, Schleswig and Holstein. There's the war in 1866 against Austria. It's also called the 7 Weeks' War. Austria is beaten very handily here and sort of pushed out of any real play here for German power. And then you have the 1870-71 Franco-Prussian War. It's really only a few months in duration. And these wars will whip up the nationalists, the patriotic fervor in Germany, and will be part of how Otto von Bismarck will create Germany. Realpolitik refers to diplomacy based on what is practical, not what's ideological or moral. And again, the contrast here is this sort of democratic plan of the Frankfurt Parliament to put Germany together. And Otto von Bismarck is a hardcore conservative. In fact, he's a reactionary, and he does what works. And what works is warfare. The Franco-Prussian War is this last war between the Germans and the French, and you should know, the big picture here, you have German expansionism versus what's going to be an issue of French honor. But the specific details here is the Spanish throne becomes available to a Hohenzollern prince named Leopold. And the French are very alarmed. They do not want a German on the Spanish throne. They don't want to be in a vice between the new superpower Germany here and Spanish Hohenzollern. So Napoleon III, who's in control of France at this time, is asking Wilhelm I for a guarantee that Leopold will not take the throne, and he wants a guarantee that he will never ask for the throne. And Wilhelm I asks Otto von Bismarck to send a message to the French saying that no, the Germans are not interested in this accession to the throne of Spain. But what happens here in the Ems dispatch, Ems is the spa town where a message is sent to the French from, and what happens is Otto von Bismarck is going to take all the diplomatic niceties out of this response, and he's basically going to tell the French to stuff it, and they have no right to tell the Germans that to force the Germans to say they'll never ask for this throne, and the French are offended, and Otto von Bismarck's picking a fight, and the French give him a declaration of war, which is one of the more foolish, disastrous things that have happened in the 1800s, because France is mowed down. In the course of a few weeks, or actually a few months here, the new German artillery pulverizes the French army. Napoleon III is captured at the Battle of Sedan. Paris is captured, and the French are going to lose 2 states. Alsace and Lorraine are peeled off and made part of Germany. The French have to pay 1 billion French francs worth of gold to the Germans, and on top of this, to further humiliate the French, Wilhelm I is crowned emperor, Kaiser of a German empire, in the Hall of Mirrors at Versailles, so rubbing salt in the wounds. As far as France goes, the Dreyfus affair, and you guys watched the video Prisoner of Honor, so you got a pretty good grasp on what is going on here. And basically the Dreyfus affair it exposes the depth of anti-Semitism in France. You guys should know that anti-Semitism is something that just doesn't come out of out of nowhere here in the 1930s as Hitler is grabbing power. Anti-Semitism has deep roots going way back into the Middle Ages. And what this affair shows about French politics is this deep division between the right and the left, between monarchists and socialists, between the church and secularists. And why the cover-up? Remember, the basic details of this affair are Alfred Dreyfus, a Jew, is accused of giving secrets to the Germans. And it's discovered that Alfred Dreyfus did not give these secrets. It was another man. And the French army is going to exonerate the real spy, refuse to have a new trial, or refuse to pardon Dreyfus. And the reason for this is the French army does not want the French public to to distrust them. They want confidence in this inevitable war that's coming against Germany to recover Alsace and Lorraine. And this war does eventually come in 1914 with World War I, but that is a little while down the road. Emile Zola is the self-promoting journalist who's going to write a famous article called J'accuse, exposing the conviction of an innocent man and the exoneration and cover-up of the real culprit. How German annexation of Alsace-Lorraine differs from earlier unification of various German states. Well, the other German states were independent German states, and they more or less willingly will hop aboard the German unification train here. And Alsace is a piece of France. Alsace was, well, it's actually peeled off from, it's actually a German state taken over by Napoleon, but we're talking about half a century. At this point, Alsace is, part of the French state. And to take this is, to take a piece of another country, not just to unite a free-floating part of this German constellation of independent states in 1870-71. The Crimean War, the cause of the Crimean War is Russian expansionism at the expense of the Ottomans as they take Moldavia and Wallachia, which are they're actually Christian territories controlled by the Ottomans that are between Russia and the Ottomans. And the Russians are also demanding control of the holy places in Jerusalem. And what this all does, it upsets the balance of power. It greatly alarms the French and the British, who will join the Ottomans to fight the Russians. So basically, this war is Russia against everybody. Russia against the Ottomans, Russia against France, and against England. The outcome here is that Russia loses the war after the capture of the Russian port of Sevastopol in Crimea. But the bigger picture here is a breakdown in the balance of power, the breakdown on the concert of Europe. There's going to be this sort of fragmentation of what was once unity and keeping a conservative order afloat and putting the lid on nationalism. As far as Russia goes, you should know Alexander II frees the serfs in 1861. And he sets up elected local small town governments. And the difference here in reform in Russia and Great Britain is in Russia it's top down. There is no parliament. There is no elected legislature. Any reform is coming from the top. And what's happening in Russia is you've got a very small middle class, very small educated group of people. You've got minimal industrialization. And you just have Russian development is dragging behind the rest of Europe. The contrast here in Great Britain is with parliamentary democracy, you get a second Reform Act, you get a third Reform Act, and the huge expansion of the franchise, the right to vote. And you're going to get government positions by competitive exams, which will replace patronage, very similar to the Pendleton Civil Service Act in the United States in 1870. You have the end of officers purchasing their commissions. You're going to have competitive exams and the appointing of officers by merit. You're going to have elementary schools, public elementary schools are going to be set up by the Parliament. You're going to have the Secret Ballot Act. You're going to have the Pure Food and Drug Act, which is the same title of a similar act in the Progressive era at the same time here in the United States. You have a public sanitation program. You have government housing. You have the legalization of unions and strikes. And you have the promotion of Irish self-rule by the Liberal Party under Gladstone. So a lot of things are happening here in a country that's increasingly becoming democratic with greater participation. Austria-Hungary, 1867. In response to Hungarian nationalism, you have the granting of self-rule and autonomy to the Magyars, to the Hungarians. This is not independence. There is still a united empire, but under one monarch. And this is called the dual monarchy. There is a Habsburg monarch all the way through the end of World War I. But the goal here is to appease, to placate the Hungarians so that they stay on board willingly. And in German, this is called the Ausgleich. This is capital A-U-S-G-L-E-I-C-H. The Ausgleich is this creation of a dual monarchy. And you'll see sometimes this will be called Austro-Hungary, same as Austria-Hungary. And if you're talking about Hungary in this time period all the way up till World War I, sometimes people just sort of super hyphenate this and just call it Austria. But technically it is Austria-Hungary. It is a dual monarchy. What is nationalism? The desire of a people to have their own country where they don't. And usually this is based upon language, although it can also include a common ethnicity, common religion, common history. And the two places that become nations in this unit that you need to know about are Italy and Germany. But you have other groups that want their own nation. They want, you have the Hungarians, you have the Serbians who are looking to add on Bosnia and Herzegovina. You have the Balts, and you have the Balts are the Estonians, Latvians, Lithuanians. You got the Finns, Ukrainians who want independence from Russia. So there's a lot of groups that are chafing under the yoke of what they see as foreign oppression. When might nationalism be an impediment to greater freedom? The idea here is that just because one nation group gets their freedom, for example, the Hungarians will get self-rule, doesn't mean that they want to grant freedom to smaller groups within their group. And within Hungary, you've got Hungarians and you've got Croats, sorry, not Hungarians, you have Romanians within Hungary, and you have Croats, and you have other groups who want their freedom, and they're not getting it. So if you're defining nationhood based upon nationality, you might exclude smaller groups, which isn't really free for them. Example would be after World War I, when Poland is created, 10% of the population is going to be Jewish. So if you define to be Polish is to be Catholic, to use religion as your identifier, then you have a group which, by definition, can't be Polish. So nationalism, if you're defining it very narrowly as a religious group, an ethnic group, or a linguistic group, you're going to exclude smaller groups that don't fit in. So there you go. There's your nutshell drive-by review for Unit 8 for AP Euro, and study hard. Look through your notes. I do have all the PowerPoints on Red Web documents. So take care and carry on.